Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
And welcome to today's show. This is your host, b-alan-bourgeois, and we have with us today Sharon Brown Keith. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you so much for having me, Alan.
Well, it's a pleasure. So we've got a tough topic to talk about. So we're just going to jump right in and give it our best here. Your book, which is a memoir, is called Mockingbird Moments.
Yes.
So it's interesting that it's a memoir with that type of a title. So let's start with that. How did the title come about?
Well, actually, I have always loved the book To Kill a Mockingbird. It's always been my favorite book, and I have a lot of memories, childhood memories associated with both watching the movie and reading the book with my family. And when I was trying to think of a title, I was just thinking about all good books and, you know, why their titles stand out and what makes a strong title. So I referred back to that book, and I was just thinking about moments in my life where, you know, I shared time with my dad, and that were special to me now because he's no longer around. And it wasn't the big moments. It wasn't necessarily my wedding day or graduation from high school or college. It was just the ordinary, everyday moments that we shared. And so I just started thinking, you know, those are my Mockingbird moments, my special moments, and that's really where the title came from.
Okay. And so your book does talk a lot about your father and the healing aspect because he apparently had died in October of 1992, and it devastated you to a certain extent. So tell us about that.
Well, you know, the grief process is going to be different for every person who goes through it. And I was reluctant with my grief. I didn't know really how to grieve, and there's no proper way to grieve. There's no timeline. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And it's not a process. I mean, it's a process. It's not something like an event. So you do have to learn how to work through it. And basically, I was not able to really come to terms with the loss until I wrote this book, which it took 25 years. And I really didn't know that I was going to write this book when I first started writing. I had ambitions of writing just sort of funny little anecdotes about my life, and it just didn't work out that way. And once I started writing, it became evident that this was a story that I had to tell. And really, in order to write anything else, I had to do this first.
Now, it's interesting that you felt that was a story that had to be told. First off, writing is always a good process of healing. And it sounds like this was definitely that process for you.
Right.
Is that about right?
Yes. When I first started, I had been writing a little blog, just little funny stories about growing up in East Texas, and I found a memoir editor and sent her the work, and, you know, I was kind of expecting her to go, oh, this is so fun, and yay, this is great. And she came back and said, you know, you're way off base. This is not what a memoir is. It needs to pivot around something that transformed your life, you know, something that changed you. Have you had an event like that? And, you know, I just wasn't even thinking about this. And I said, oh, no, you know, I'm pretty normal. Nothing big has happened, because I equated that with that I've done some great work or something to be remembered for, not just that my father had passed away and that changed me. And so I pouted and thought, I can't do this. You know, I can't write anything because I don't know what to do. And when I referred back to what I sent to her, I realized that not once did I ever say that my father died. And it just kind of pierced my heart, because I thought, gosh, I can't even write it. You know, how could I can't even think it or say it. How can I write it? And so then I realized that was my story. And, you know, once I knew that, the story almost wrote itself. And there's a favorite quote of mine that Michelangelo said when he was carving, I think it was the David, said, I saw the angel in the marble and I carved until I set him free. And to me, that was like when I wrote this book, it was like something that once I knew that's what I needed to do, I could see it, and I wrote until I set myself free.
So now it comes to the question, you've written this book, and I ask this of a lot of people who write autobiographies and memoirs and stuff, so this is nothing personal for you or anything, but it helps people understand, why do you feel this story should be shared?
Well, really when I wrote it, I guess I was kind of just being selfish and wanted to write something, and this wasn't my first thing that I was going to do, and it ended up, I was writing about my dad, so I wrote it without really thinking about what it could do for other people. It was just really, at the end of it, I was like, wow, that helped me. Well, I'm glad I did that. And once the book went out, I was overwhelmed by the comments that I received from people, strangers. People I didn't know would send me messages on Facebook, and people I didn't know well, who may be friends of friends, would contact me and say, hey, I just lost my mom last year, and I read your book, and it just helped me heal because I realized that I can do this, I can survive. And so, once I started hearing that, I thought, I guess it's universal. People are going to die. Everyone's going to have someone who in their family who dies. But the way we deal with it is different. And the fact that there's no clear-cut way kind of gives you some freedom because you can always say, well, I have the right to feel this way. I don't have to do it the same way you do. And I think that's what most people shared with me was, we all do it differently, but it's a universal feeling, and you do feel like you're not alone when you read the book.
And so with that in mind, the fact that it is helping other people and stuff, have you thought of writing anything additional related to this?
Not so much. It was really exhausting, and I think that I want to look to write some different things. I don't want to say that I won't do it, but for now, I just kind of want this to stand on its own, and it's so personal and such a tribute to such a great man in my life that I don't want to do anything close to it right now, but I might one day.
Now, out of curiosity, you did get a master's degree in counseling for schools. I assume this was after the passing. Was this part of the healing that you went through?
Well, yes. Actually, my father died in 1992, and in 2001, I decided to go back and get my master's in school counseling. And really, to be honest, part of it was I was tired of being in the classroom. I taught high school, and I'd been in the classroom for 14 years and had 4 or 5 different preps every year, and I was just really tired. And one thing that I noticed was the kids were drawn to me as far as I had a lot of kids who would come and talk to me about personal issues and their struggles. And, as a classroom teacher, you want to be supportive and empathetic, but, really we're supposed to refer things like that to the counselor and not try to handle it ourselves. And I started thinking, maybe that's what I really need to do. And I think that the students were drawn to me because they saw a real person who they knew was struggling. Some of those kids, the year that my dad passed away, they really, went through the whole year process with me. And so I think that students they saw me as a real person who didn't just, my life wasn't just the happiest all the time, and they felt comfortable talking to me. So that's really what helped me decide to become a school counselor. And
so dealing with the grief and the book, is there any aspect that you use in the book in school to help with the process for any of the students? Well,
this year we had, I had a 6th grade girl whose brother was killed in a horrible car wreck. And, she came back to school and she just was like, I just can't do this. I can't come back to school. I don't want to do anything. And I just feel different than everyone else. And, I didn't know, really, because I can't imagine being a 12-year-old girl and having those emotions and being so close to a brother and losing them. So, I still struggle with what do I tell them, because I was an old lady. I was 29 when I lost my dad. But, I told her, I said, want me to tell you something? And, I had a book in my office, and I said, I wrote this book, and, you may or may not want to read it. But, I explained that every feeling she has is justified. You don't have to try to convince people of your grief. You're justified to be sad. And I gave her the book. And one thing that we did on my campus, when the kids study memoirs, the teachers had me come to the classroom, and so I actually made an accelerated reading test over the book, and it's worth 9 points. So the kids are like, "Holy cow, I want to read that." So I have been able to use the book in that way, but just it's so hard because the year before last, we had a student, a sixth grade girl, who committed suicide, and it was such a devastating thing that, I feel like I've learned so much myself, but when it comes to trying to help someone, it's so hard because they're going to feel something so different than you, even though it's the same category. You've both lost someone.
Mm-hmm. And we have just about a minute or so left, and you've talked about suicide for students. As a counselor, is there anything you can say to the people that might be listening that may help them deal with students that may be going through that thought process?
Oh, it's just such a heart-wrenching, devastating thing that happens far too often. And the main thing is, teachers are our best line of defense, and we just need to, every day thank God for the teachers we have, because they're going to be the first person that student's going to probably say something to, or they're going to be the one to notice changes in behavior, because they're with kids, that student every day. And so really I think that, just be aware. And the students who had to deal with the death of their friends, they learned so much, and they were very proactive about when they were worried or concerned about other students who may be thinking these thoughts or having a hard time dealing with things. And so that's the thing, just let them know, say something. You've got to say something. And that's the main point, that we need to make sure everyone understands. If you see something different, if you're concerned at all, you may be wrong, but it's better to be wrong about that than to have something horrible happen.
Well, we're going to stop right there, and we'll let the sponsors do their thing, and we will be back in just a moment.
Okay.
A new online bookstore, IndieLector.store, is unlike any other. IndieLector.store offers great prices from top indie authors and supports authors at the same time by paying them more for their books. IndieLector.store has a readers club that gives you free books and special deals. Watch the IndieLector.store continue to grow before it opens in the fall of 2019 at IndieLector.store.
Howdy, I'm John Cruder, the Midnight Marauder. I guess you might say that I'm a vigilante who rights the wrongs I see along my many travels to balance the scales of justice, especially those of the corrupt and murderous members of the Town Council of Bandera, Texas. You can follow my many adventures in a series of Midnight Marauder books written by Roy Clinton on Amazon.com and TopWesterns.com. Or, if you prefer, listen to my adventures in audiobook form by downloading them from Audible.com or iTunes. This is R. William James, the voice of the Midnight Marauder.
Do you love to read great new ebooks? Visit EBG247.com. Be the first to discover the next bestseller. At EBG247, we have the web's largest selection of great new book reads, from that amazing new fiction or nonfiction to horror, romance, and fantasy. We even have today's best children's books. That's EBG247.com. New books arrive daily, and all ebooks start at just 99 cents. If you love to read, then you'll love EBG247.com. EBG247.com. Low prices, large selection, and an easy-to-use website. It's all only at EBG247.com.
A new online bookstore, IndieLector.store, is unlike any other. IndieLector.store offers great prices from top indie authors and supports authors at the same time by paying them more for their books. IndieLector.store has a readers club that gives you free books and special deals. Watch the IndieLector.store continue to grow before it opens in the fall of 2019 at IndieLector.store.
Have you ever thought what you would do if you had to put your life on hold to parent your parents? Charlotte Cannon has lived the journey caring for 3 parents with dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. Her book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, How to Parent Your Parents, is a survival guide for adult children caring for aging seniors. Her book is available at books.txauthors.com, Amazon, or your favorite bookstore. For fans of paranormal romance comes this riveting young adult novel, Scythe of Darkness. Written by Dawn Hested, is both bold and irresistible. Thrust into a sinister world with a deadly desire, this Grim Reaper romance is a book you won't be able to put down. Available at your favorite bookstore or at books.txauthors.com. The Middle East continues to be a political hot button. Author James E. Doucette's new novel, The Last Assassination, takes you into a web of intrigue and deceit. The findings shock the Washington establishment and will jolt the reader. Available at your favorite bookstore or at books.txauthors.com.
Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
And welcome back. This is your host, b-alan-bourgeois, and I am talking today with Sharon Brown Keith. Welcome back, Sharon.
Thank you.
So real quickly, we were talking in the first half predominantly about your book, Mockingbird Moments, a memoir, about how you dealt with the loss of your father and things of that nature. Where can people find your book?
It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and also you can online, both of those. And also you can go to my website, SharonBrownKeith.com, and order it there.
Okay. And if people want to reach out to you to talk about grief and the losses and your book, is there a particular way that they can reach you, either on Twitter, Facebook, or anything like that?
Yes, on Facebook, I'm Sharon Brown Keith, and I also have a page, Mockingbird Moments, and email SharonBrownKeith@gmail.com, and Twitter is @SassyChevelle.
All right, I've got to ask, why at Sassy? How did that name come up?
Well, actually, I'm kind of sassy. I'm talking about a kind of sad book, but I'm pretty sassy in my everyday life. And Chevelle comes from it's an idea I have. I haven't started writing this book, but it's an idea of a book that I am going to write. It's called Becoming a Chevelle, and it's after a real sassy student that I had. It's not a story about her, but she inspired me I think I want to write a book about how to become a strong Southern woman. And this little 6-year-old girl gave me quite the lesson in how to do that one day in the hallway. So that's where that name came from.
Now, that's interesting. A 6-year-old is teaching somebody, an adult, how to be sassy, a sassy Southern woman. Now, you got to give me a little bit more on that one.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you, Chevelle owned it. I used to work at an elementary school where I was the counselor, and I had morning hall duty every morning, and there were like 3 positions. We were kind of like a SWAT team, just waiting to correct the kids, get them where they're going. And, if you've been in an elementary school, sometimes it's like trying to herd cats, trying to get them all to where they need to be. And this little girl every day would pass by, and she would sneak off and get in the bathroom, or she would hide out with one of her friends, and she wouldn't go to the cafeteria as she was supposed to. So every day I would have to say, Chevelle, please get where you're going. You know, every day I have to tell you, and you know the rules and blah, blah, blah. So one day she comes along, and I do the same little routine. Chevelle, don't go in the bathroom. You've got to get to the cafeteria. And she looked at me, and she rolled her eyes and just did this just glare, daggers coming out of her eyes at me, and she stormed off. And my friend at the next station said, well, good morning, Chevelle, how are you? And she said, you know, the people at this school are really starting to piss me off. And, of course, my friend was just dying laughing, but trying not to because, you know, she's 6 and she probably shouldn't use such salty language. And so she corrected her, and she went on, and we just got together after that, and there's several of us who thought, you know what, she shouldn't have said that probably, but she owned it. And she was just she became sort of our little muse for, you know, when you need to say something, just be direct, be like Chevelle. So that's where that idea has come from.
Well, that makes it sound like it will be a fun, interesting story to read. So
yes,
I look forward to seeing what you come up with.
It will be a lot more upbeat. Now, my memoir, I do have to say, it is about a sad topic, but there's a lot of humor that I try to weave into it. So it's not a complete downer.
And I understand you're also working on another book. Tell us about that one.
Yes, I actually have been asked. I grew up in Nacogdoches, Texas. Very proud of that, being from the oldest town in Texas. And I've been asked to write a posthumous biography of a local businessman who contributed to the growth and development and preservation and heritage of Nacogdoches. And I can't say a whole lot about it at this point, but it's such an honor. And I was asked by a guy I've known my whole life, who I went to school with, who is instrumental in getting this done. And he had read my memoir and just said that he just wanted me to write something like that, a great tribute for someone who he felt was deserving. So it's exciting, and it's a huge challenge because I never met the man. So I'm trying to make sure that I do just justice to this and make sure that I add my own personal touch, but at the same time honor him for everything he's done, because he's done a lot to preserve the history and heritage of our old town.
And may I ask who that person is?
They have asked me not to say that his name right now, but once I get a little farther down the road, I will definitely be able to talk more about it.
Okay. And do you have a time frame when that might be available?
I'm hoping I'm going to try to have it completed, and this is my own personal goal, hopefully by December. And if not, it'll definitely hopefully be done in 2019 for sure. And I'm working on another book that just the idea came to me a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't been able to stop writing it. So it's kind of been crazy, but exciting at the same time. It's a work of fiction, which I never thought I would be able to do.
And why's that?
Well, I was actually talking to a guy. We were at a book fair trying to, get people to, peddle our books. And we were talking about, we had both written memoirs. And, when you write about things in your life, it's easy to write and keep it in order. But when you're creating a work, you have to make sure that, you tie up all the loose ends and there's no holes in your plot and your story, and that you keep your facts, in agreement throughout the book. And I found that to be the most challenging thing, but also it has been the most fun thing I think I've ever done. And I know that sounds real nerdy. I've obviously had a lot more fun than just writing this book, but I do think that it's going to end up being another fun book to read, but it's also going to kind of be a relatable person. Of course, a strong Southern girl, but she's a complete mess. And in the end, hopefully she's going to triumph and find out who she is and end up being the person she's intended to be.
Sure. It sounds like there's a lot of mix going on in there. And I'm assuming that you're using a lot of your East Texas growing up and understanding of that culture as part of the novel. Is that right?
I am. I'm also, interestingly enough, I'm going to have part of it take place in Gonzales, Texas, which my grandparents lived there, and growing up we used to go down and visit, and I just thought, oh no, it's the most boring place. My papa would get us in the car or his truck and drive us around, and we'd have to read all the historical markers, except for he wouldn't let the granddaughters read it. My brother was the only grandson, and he read to all of us like, we weren't capable. And, it was just a lot of history and, kind of boring for a young kid. But now I went back a couple of weeks ago, and I'd already been toying with the idea of having part of this book there, and met up with my cousins, my uncle's 80th birthday party, and we just had the best time. And there's been a lot of revitalization in downtown, and it was just the neatest place. And so I'm real excited about that because I do have a lot of memories of the town and feel like that it's going to be a great backdrop for part of this story.
Right. Well, we only have just about a minute or so left. If you would be kind enough to let people know where they can, again, contact you to keep up to date with your new books and also where to purchase your current book.
All right. On Facebook, I'm Sharon Brown Keith, and my email is sharonbrownkeith@gmail.com. And there's also a Facebook page, Mockingbird Moments. I have a website, again, sharonbrownkeith.com. And my book is available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com or on my website.
And, of course, at books.txauthors.com, we happily have a book there as well. Well, I want to thank you very much, Sharon. And before I let you go, we always ask our guests if they have a word of encouragement for somebody who wants to write.
Yes. Just do it. Don't be afraid. I used to worry a lot about, I would picture my senior English teacher going, oh, no, you can't start a sentence with and, all these rules that I've been breaking ever since. But everyone has a story to tell. So just if you feel like writing, just start doing it, and I promise it's going to reward you in so many ways.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Sharon, for being with us. We do appreciate your time, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Alan.
Bourgeois Media and Consulting, a book publishing consultant where creative inspiration is realized. More at bourgeoismedia.com.
Award-winning children's author Maria Ashworth has written books that deal with today's issues for children like bullying, friendship, blended families, love, and acceptance. Her recent release, Sushi Kitty, and other works can be found at mariaashworth.com or books.txauthors.com. Connect with her on Facebook and Twitter for speaking events and presentations.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website at indiebeacon.com.